The God Says the Truth But Waits by Leo Tolstoy was a very great story. So its author, Leo Tolstoy, was a Russian author which was considered as the best authors and writers of all the time. The story started with the Russian town of Vladimir Ivan Dmitrich Aksionov, who is a successful merchant with his family and young children. One summer, as Aksionov gets ready for his fair to sell his goods, his wife talks to him and warned him that he had a bad dream and is a sign of bad luck. On the way to the fair, Aksionov encounters a fellow merchant and his companion to the inn. They drink tea together and sleep in the same rooms, and he went out and left his co-merchant. After 25 miles, he stops to feed his horses. When he stopped, soldiers and officials arrive and begin questioning Aksionov that the man had a tea night before was dead. After this, Aksionov trembles in fear when the official searches his belongings and removes a knife streaked with blood. So he was immediately arrested. His wife visits him and even suspects him, and he thinks after she leaves that only God knows the truth. One day, the newly arrived inmate named Makar Semyonich, who is accused by stealing a horse, told the story of his past crime. And Aksionov suspects the man who is responsible for framing him. So, after reminiscing, Aksionov remembers everything he has lost. After 2 weeks, Aksionov discovers Semyonich digging a tunnel under his sleeping shelf. So, Semyonich angrily offers Aksionov escape and threatens to kill him if he told authorities. Aksionov says Semyonich that has already taken his life and he shall do as God directs him. The story ends with Semyonich confessing to the governor. By that time, the officials arranged Aksionov's release. However, Aksionov was already dead. In the story, psychological approach is greatly observed. The God Says the Truth But Waits serves as a realization on the importance of having great emotional stand and perspective. The narrative of the story is focused on the protagonist. There are substantial accounts of only 2 brief periods in Aksionov's life. The first half of the story is about the accounts of the murder of the merchant. The second is the reminiscing of experiences and the meeting of Aksionov and Semyonich, which is the real murderer. During the narrative of the story, the tone of the emotion like fear, sadness, and despair was observed. Physical description of protagonist and brief portrait of manner of his life, of his emotional state was described in the story. Symmetry was also observed in the narration of the events in the story. Both narrations begin with a conversation. In the first half of the story, there is a conversation between Aksionov and his wife prior to the departure on a journey. Gusev maintained that the theme of the story was eventual triumph of truth over falsehood. Aksionov as a character in the story started not just a spiritual being. Through a sudden shock, after what he experienced, he became more faithful to God, realizing that it was his only hope. During the first half of the story, Aksionov had no hope for what had happened in his life. He achieved his full spiritual consciousness upon forgiving Semyonich. His soul became free. However, the sad part was his death after revealing the truth. At the end of the story, pardon, an action of liberty in jail was unimportant because the real freedom was experienced with the full and final liberation of his spirit from the pains, experiences, and the faith that he had in the journey. The story God Says the Truth But Waits by Leo Tolstoy is a realization on how to accept and forgive despite being covered by falsifications, because there is belief that God can only see the truth and He alone can set us free. The story reflects real life stories too. There are instances in our lives when we felt injustices that we encountered and got frustrated in life. But there is also a wake-up call for us to stand for righteousness, believing that God will give us wisdom and strength to stand firm, knowing that He is on our side and will never leave us.